Hi, Annette Lang here. Welcome to my podcast, The History of Personal Training, or at least my experience in it. This podcast will be a combination of my stories. Full disclosure, I might not remember things exactly the way that you did. Now, my stories of 30 plus years in the fitness industry and then specifically personal training. I was at the beginning of a lot of events, the firsts, so to speak, and so I hope you enjoy those stories. In addition, I'll be interviewing lots of different people whom I've met through the years, and I think that will help piece together a wonderful timeline of the development of this profession that we now call personal training. Enjoy. This interview is with Michael Youssef. Michael Youssef was the main guy in a lot of the education programs at Equinox during the early days. He made it so easy to understand concepts of physiology, and he's just so energetic and charismatic. Anyway, Michael Youssef, enjoy. All right, Michael Youssef. I've got you now. I'm so happy to speak with you. I would like to hear your background, how you got into fitness, exercise, and how, I remember I met you at Equinox, and so if I could get you to start talking about your background, and then I will jump in anytime if that's okay with you.
Sure.
Great. Go for it.
All right. A little bit of a backstory, and you can cut this down to any point because it dates back to 1968. In fourth grade, I won the President's Council on Physical Fitness. That was the thing that Kennedy had set up after Eisenhower had his heart attack.
So what do you mean you won it?
It was in all the schools. Well, it was in lots and lots of public schools. The gym teachers obviously had to decide to give it out as a test. It was like you had a softball throw, a sit-up thing, a shuttle run. I forget all the components back then. You had to do, I think, 6 chin-ups. Right. Of course, I was in fourth grade. To me, it was like, oh, it's not that I was a jock. It was like, this is play. And gym, of course, was my only class I got an A in. But anyway, you get in the beginning, at the end of the year, you get to go up in front of all the kids the kids who won whatever honors and best attendance. And I got this little set of things, including a patch, like a circle patch, the kind like lifeguards get.
Yes.
That said that with the eagle, the eagle of the president's eagle, with the olive branch and thing. In fourth grade, man, that was like, holy cow!
And it was where was this, Mike? Where was this? New Jersey?
No, this was New York.
Okay. That's right.
DS 92, Public School 92 in the Bronx, I think. Don't count me 100% on the numbers, but I think they all fog up. But somewhere in there, Belmont Avenue in the Bronx or something like that. And I wasn't the only one. There was a bunch of kids who did. And anyway, that was the first time I noticed I had a modest amount of talent in something, because I certainly didn't have it in math, English, science, history, or anything else. And that would follow me all through high school. But somewhere around 13 years old, I had some trouble in my family background, and I was living on my own for a little while. And at 14, the state of New York decided I needed adult supervision. And I know this sounds terrible, but it was really one of the best things that ever happened to me. And I am so grateful.
Wow.
And you'll see why in a second. I got sent to a place called the LaSalle School for Boys in Albany, New York. It used to be an orphanage in the 1800s, and then slowly the state took it over. And so it's half what they call Christian Brothers, half lay staff, regular people. Right. And it's for kids who, if you don't have a parent in your life, a mom or a dad,
right,
you can imagine you get a little rough around the edges. And I had gotten thrown out of school a couple of times and stuff. It wasn't like anything in the movies with like prison guards and stuff like that, but it was, you were sequestered for sure.
Wow.
In there, Mr. Orsini, if he listens to this, I want to let him know. He was the gym teacher. He was a heavy-set, plodding jogger. This is 1971, I think. And he was a plodding jogger, and he says, oh, so tough guy, Mr. New York, whatever, what do you want to be when you grow up? And at the time, I had seen the Charles Bronson movie where he plays a self-employed assassin. And I thought, that's what I want to be. And he said, he didn't break a smile, he didn't laugh or nothing. He said, so how are you going to go about that? And of course, the Vietnam War was still going on, so I thought I'd join the Marines, go to sniper school. I'd already thought about a correspondence course in locksmithing, so I could learn how to pick locks. And he says, "Why don't you do what you love?" Because I was one of the guys in gym class who would help put things away and stuff. And I said, "Like what?" He goes, "Well, what do I do all day long?" And I thought at first I was going to say something derogatory, and then I thought about it. He shows up in gym shorts and sneakers, and he dodgeball, wiffle ball, flag football, and he also, this was an all male environment where every other word was F with a K sound. You know what I mean? He never cursed. He let you know when he was angry, but he never cursed. He also had a very normal, attractive wife. He drove a normal car, and I got to tell you, from where I was standing, that was like, that's heaven. I would love to be him.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So slowly he worked on me, and we would jog together. Actually, we would get permission to go outside of the boundaries of the school and do like a 2-mile run, which in those days was a big distance. No one was running marathons yet. And slowly he said, if you want to do this though, you got to go to college. If you want to go to college, you need to get a real high school degree. You want to get a high school thing, we can send you outside, but you got to behave yourself in living quarters now. So that was 9th grade. And 10th, no, I lie. That was 10th grade. 11th and 12th grade, I then went to Vincentian Institute. It's a Catholic school. I chose there not because of their sports teams, but because the girls wore uniforms. They had skirts back then. Albany High School they were wearing long pants. So, but luckily, he also got me into the American Red Cross. I became what they called back then senior life saving. Now it's advanced water rescue. But, I eventually got my WSI and all that. He hired me even when I went to college in the summer times to be a guard and eventually become the waterfront director as I got older. So I still maintain a lot of contact with him. But I went to, at that time, which was one of the top phys ed schools in New York State, a place called Brockport State. It was Brockport, Cortland, Springfield, Mass, Manhattan College. They were the big phys ed schools on the east side. I know there were schools in other parts of the country, but 1 out of every 11 students was all city, all capped, all county. We were all, all phys ed. It was like 1,100 phys ed majors. And it was a good program, and I stayed with that.
So, Mike, what year are you talking about now?
How I got into fitness.
No, but what year are you talking about now?
Oh, this is, all right, so I graduated high school 74.
Okay.
Graduated college 78, 79. I had to do student teaching for a year.
Okay.
I got sidetracked for a little while because I also took dance classes, and it was modern dance, which I had never heard of before or even seen. But I got to tell you, they had an open-mindedness about movement. Most of our lives, it's how many, how far, how fast.
Right.
Very quantitative. And I like that. Don't get me wrong. I want to brag, but I set the discus record. It lasted 1 year. I set the crawl, the short-length crawl in my high school. That lasted 1 year. But, I understand numbers. But dance, of course, is about quality of movements. Burst, sustained, undulate, totally different language. Plus, they knew how to notate movement. How you can notate music, so a person from China can read music from Brahms from the 18th century?
Yes, not really, but yeah, sure.
Yeah, if you could read music, you could read music from any point in history.
Right.
Dancers have a system called Laban notation, where they can take something from Jerome Robbins' West Side Story in 1956, and you have to pay for it, but you open this book, and if you could read it, you can tell exactly what dance steps. And it doesn't look like dance. It's little algebraic numbers and lines and shapes. But suffice to say that the dance thing pulled me for a little while, and I got bit by the performance bug because there were so few men in the dance world anyway. But that led me trying to do something that would put together the three major forces in my life: fitness, this new one, dance, and unfortunately, I did spend 3.5 years at that school for boys. Not everyone was as successful as I was. Many of them would wind up going to places like Attica and Dannemora prisons. So my master's degree was at Ohio State, where I was a first departmental fellow, by the way. Wow. And it was in the dance department because they said, this will give you the movement things that you're interested in. Ohio State did my undergraduate textbook. There was two guys named Matthews and Fox. They, at the time, were like McCardle and Catch, and they were the gods of 1970s exercise physiology. Unfortunately, they were not friends anymore. There had been a thing that now that I teach college, I sort of understand what probably happened. But anyway, so I went to Ohio State, and of course, the Ohio State's a Division I football school, basketball, top league. They live in a separate dormitory. They have a separate meal plan. You could see why high-end athletes excel. They have tutors. They help them get summer jobs and alumni and all that.
Right, right.
So it's nice to brush against real talent. I looked at myself and I go, oh no, I've been a jock all my life, but I was a jock really without not much talent. These guys were jocks all their lives. So probably in fourth grade they went to football camp, and you saw how fast big guys can move. And of course you also saw the injury side of things, sports medicine, physiology went from work physiology to exercise. Kinesiology was sort of just coming about. I had a kinesiology degree in my undergraduate, but I had to draw that degree up. There was no official kinesiology degree in 1975. Right. There was an emphasis in research. There was, you were a phys ed major with an emphasis in education, or something like that. But after that, at the same time, as you probably know, Arthur Jones was down in Florida, and he invented the super pullover. I think it was 1971.
That was the
first Nautilus machine.
Florida, yeah, Nautilus.
He was originally, of course, going for more of a sports medicine thing.
Okay,
sure.
So you were talking about Arthur Jones.
Yeah, Arthur Jones had invented Nautilus.
Yeah.
At the same, and of course Billie Jean King and Joe Willie, Broadway Joe, Joe Namath of the Jets. These were nationally. Willis Reed of the Knicks, and in that year, 1969, the Knicks were the champions in New York. So these were figures who, even though I didn't go to these sporting events, I certainly everyone knew who they were. Right. And they had gone down to this place in Florida, this little thing, and this strange, piece of equipment. Now,
see, I don't remember when I first met you. I don't remember that you knew about Nautilus, because that was my whole background. Was Nautilus?
Well, you were down in Florida. You did Gainesville, right? Yeah. You got Bartles and Beck. What was their names? Doddard, and I'm trying to think of all the people
Ellington,
you probably got.
Darden, Arthur Jones.
Yeah. You had people that would. You had it's like me studying with Thomas Jefferson or something.
Oh.
So I mean, So I knew of these people. I didn't know them personally, though. And of course, at the exact same time, as you probably are aware of, Kenneth Cooper's doing work in Dallas, Texas. Right. His wife is taking a traditional jazz dance class and is slowly leaking classified secrets to her teacher that says, my husband says you got to keep moving. A typical dance class is like a professional tennis game. It's like 15 seconds of movement, then the teacher stops the entire class and gives corrections. Right. And then you do it again. It's like that's what ballet, jazz, tap, it's all like that. The class is an hour and a half, but you're really only moving probably 30, 40 minutes. Right. And apparently, Mrs. What was it? The doctor, the aerobics. What's his name?
Ken Cooper?
Yeah. Mrs. Cooper tells this lady that we got to keep moving, and I guess she worked on the choreography where they kept moving, and some variation of what you and I would probably today call jazzercise came about. Right. Two of her instructors wanted to get out of Dallas, which I understand, and they went to California to become movie stars, but I guess because they had Texas accents, they didn't do so well. But they taught this class in, I guess, what's the equivalent of Rodeo Drive or Beverly Hills, and Henry Fonda's daughter was in there. What? And she said, this is great, you guys should take this on the road. I wasn't there for the conversation, of course, but I imagine it went something like, well, we like to, but we just two little bluebells from Texas. And, of course, Jane Fonda had all the connections with distribution, copyright, and, and all that stuff. And so all that was happening in the early 70s, all that fitness renaissance, whatever you want to call it. And, here we were going through the ropes. I remember the first time I walked into a Nautilus room. I think they had 8 pieces. And in those days, you did a single circuit. There's 12 reps, right? 2 counts
Absolutely.
up.
Absolutely. 8 to 12. Yep. Make you puke workouts.
Yeah. And I, of course, it's like a kid in the candy shop just because it's new. It's like, this is so cool. And, of course, there was a few guys in my colleagues who had would jump up on me, so they forced rep negatives, things that you never did with traditional free weights. So of course all that happened at that time, and I think minimum wage was like $2.20 an hour. Don't quote me on that, but I think we got $3 an hour. So I was happy as a pig in poop.
But so wait. So where were you working? Where was it?
All right. So the first one was Albany, New York, because I got my first part-time job at the Albany Y, which is another great place for training because the Y takes good care of its people. It doesn't financially pay a lot of money, it pay terrible, but there's none of this performance pressure of go out and do this, otherwise you're going to get fired. Right. There was true mentoring, there was no personal training. Everything was done in small groups, instruction and stuff. And believe it or not, the first day I was there, all I did was clean the bathrooms. Yeah. But slowly it moved to the gymnastics area, and then they got a Nautilus room, and we all went through this little orientation thing. And I still remember it. I still remember the chains and the blue paint, and in those days everything was the same. The compound leg press, compound chest press, the super pullover.
Super pullover, yeah.
Yeah,
okay, so then how did you get to Equinox?
All right, so...
wait. What about, didn't you do Olympics in Africa or something? Ski
but that was years later, yeah. So this is when I was a teenager. This is, in my teens and stuff. All right, so jump ahead. I graduated from Ohio State. I see a job for a strength and conditioning coach for the Republic of South Africa for what we would call soccer. Everyone else in the world, they call it football of course. Right. But right. So I'm like, I just got this degree, and I'm about to get married, and I said, well, let me try for it. Now, little did I know, because Nelson Mandela was still in prison, this guy Pik Botha was the prime minister, and he was a hardcore Afrikaner. That's the opposite of rights for the indigenous people of Africa. Yes. He was hardcore Afrikaner. They had the gold, the uranium. They're pretty sure they had illegal nuclear weapons and stuff because there was a satellite explosion once. But anyway, I didn't know any of that. Desmond Tutu just never came to my house and told me, don't go there. Everyone else was boycotting them. And of course, I got the job. Me and two guys from England. The two guys from England were older pro soccer players for England, very famous teams. Let me remember: Mansfield, something, and Arsenal. And apparently they're like the New York Yankees. Yeah, and they were older. They were probably 40 at the time. And it was perfect because I didn't know anything about soccer. I never played soccer. I played football and cross country and stuff. I never played soccer. I barely knew the rules. I couldn't even remember how many people were on the pitch or the field. But the good thing is they did. And they didn't know anything about taping an ankle or a knee, because I spent that time at Ohio State, 2 years of working with all the athletes and stuff, and they certainly weren't interested in doing sit-ups and push-ups and sprints. They wanted to do field play strategy-wise. Right. So it was a perfect mix, and my team was indigenous people. There was Soto, Swazi, and Zulu. Wow. That would be like Comanche, Apache, and Navajo or something like that, if you're from America. They showed up to practice. They looked like normal guys, except that none of them had sneakers. We could not get any kind of corporate sponsor from Reebok or Adidas or any of those companies because we were banned from the World Cup. We were banned from the Olympics. I didn't know that until I got there. In fact, I probably didn't know it until my third paycheck. I should have realized when we couldn't stop off in any other country to refuel in Africa because the boycott. But anyway, we were undefeated, which was wonderful. And my team was, I want to remind you that they were all tribal, all black. Not, but in that country, for instance, Puerto Rican or Portuguese would be considered colored, which is a separate tier group. And of course, if I'm American, so I speak American and I tip 20%. So naturally, we were treated like kings. Right. But our team was undefeated. We were undefeated. We were the equivalent of like national champions. And sports, like music, if you want to overcome racial and political changes, you could pass laws, but you're not going to change attitudes. Right. You show up at a game, and your team scores, and it's a great play. That guy blocked it. Everyone stands up, and it doesn't matter who you are, right? That's the beauty of some of this.
Exactly right.
Someone gets injured, all that kind of thing. Anyway, so we went from being minor celebrities. So when we were going to Johannesburg, Monday was my day off, going to Johannesburg to get real food and stuff like that. It was great. We got treated like celebrities. Unfortunately, we also got our visas. We didn't get our visas renewed, and we hired a lawyer and all that. And there was a bunch of malarkey, but we're pretty sure it's because the team was undefeated. And occasionally, after the big games in Johannesburg or Pretoria, there might be a bomb that would go off on a bus terminal or something, and that was the ANC or whatever,
Right.
terrorists or patriots, depending on your point of view. But there was probably, because they don't have the constitutional right to assemble the way we do.
Right.
So the games became a thing for people to come in from Zimbabwe, Madagascar, or down the street. I don't know where they came from. I didn't, I wasn't connected with that. But anyway, it was pointed to me that's why I got discontinued. So came back to the United States. One minor thing, because would eventually become one of my academic contributions to our industry. A lot of my guys got sick. It would translate in English to Slim's disease because they would vomit and get diarrhea, and I mean really bad diarrhea, like part of their intestines started coming out. And my goalie, my first string center, and one of my wings all died, and they basically died with these like purple lesions.
Wow.
And of course coughing to death, which takes about 2 weeks. I mean coughing nonstop.
Wow.
And of course the apartheid, there's 3 levels of hospitals. There's white, colored, and black. And you go to the black hospitals, they don't have refrigeration. So augmentin and things like that just don't exist.
Wow.
Of course, like you, I've got a college degree. I could look at a microscope. On Mondays I would go to the universities and try to look up what it was, since all 3 of them had the same symptoms. These purple, pussy, look like tick bites, except they weren't. They were under their armpit, behind the ear. The diarrhea, obviously, in the beginning you start off with food poisoning. Then I thought for sure, I found out that some of them on the way home from practice, because they would walk home, they'd stop off at this gas station that was run by 3 women, and you can get gas and oil or sex.
Right.
So I got the Department of Health to close the place down, but by that point it was too late. And over the course of the year they died. Anyway, fast forward, I get fired, or we don't get rehired, let's put it that way. I come back to New York, and a lot of my friends who are dancers have the same symptoms. And of course, that time it was gay-related immune deficiency.
Right.
And of course, nobody had in the health club business, none of the aerobic instructors, none of the personal trainers had, and personal training was brand new. I think Mike Shea over at Plus One was the one who started it, but the rest of us caught on. I was at Apple on 88th Fulton Street when I came back to New York. That was whatever year, 1982, I think. But like a lot of the group fitness people who probably had an active sex life in the altered gender preference thing, or whatever you want to call it, gay, had a lot of the same things.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. I did the normal thing. I went to the drugstore, took pregnancy things to see how much nitrogen they were peeing out. I used first aid for these horrible things on their skin, these lesions and stuff. I used Listerine at one point. I tried everything. And I started making notes. Now, eventually jump ahead about 10 years. So I work off and on at a lot of different clubs, opened up my own club for about 5 years. That was a disaster. Youssef Fitness. We went out of business because Equinox opened up at 19th Street. And I sold my members, most of my members, and about 7 of us, including myself, to Equinox. So
Wait, what year was this?
This was 1992,
Okay.
3, somewhere around that time period. And that's where I met this handsome, charming, with the gift of gab, should have been in politics, Bob Asquari. And slowly but surely, he and I become friends. And of course, he's sort of my boss anyway, if you remember.
Yes.
I met this stringy girl from Florida, and this fairly muscular, robust-looking guy with long black hair named Rich Beretta, Johnny Bowden, Dose Condon. A terrific team of people, and each one of them was a black belt in fitness on some level. The good thing about that Equinox buying out all these clubs, it had harvested a fantastic generation of fitness professionals.
But now, Mike, you're saying Equinox bought out fitness clubs. I never heard anybody say that. I thought...
Talk to Molly Fox, Jeff Martin.
But that's what I was going to say. Like just the other stuff, but they didn't buy them out, didn't they? Or they just...
They bought me out, for a lot of money.
I see.
A lot of money. I was in debt $300,000 at that point because I had other troubles going on.
I see.
We got flooded and stuff like that. But I mean, a lot of money, enough money to pay off that money. Let's put it that way. And they bought, I don't know how many members. I had 1,100 members or something.
So was it a good thing for you, or?
I didn't have much choice.
I see.
The things that had nothing to do with Equinox were terrible. There was above me was a restaurant owned by a very famous New Yorker named John Gotti, and it was a very upscale restaurant. It was called Canistell's, and it was originally owned by another fellow named Tony Castellano. I don't know if you know what happened to him, but some bunch of guys with Groucho Marx glasses. He was coming out of a steakhouse, and they decided to shoot him. And this guy John Gotti, inherited, of course, all his real estate, including us. We were in the basement of that building. It's a fancy building. It's on Madison Avenue, Park Avenue South.
Wow.
So, you know.
See, I don't remember any of this.
Yeah, well, it doesn't have anything to do with fitness, but it had a little. It eventually would cost me my marriage, because the things that happened financially were disastrous. There was things I didn't know about. I just don't have a business background. I know a lot about sit-ups and push-ups, and not too much about certificate of occupancy, all the bribing of the city inspectors.
Right. But listen, let me get back to saying a couple of things about you. That I remember you as an educator at Equinox Fitness Training Institute. You were like so amazing, because I still remember. I talk about you to this day when I teach workshops. Like you explaining, like, diabetes and low blood sugar, and like your personification and storytelling of how to explain medical issues. I have never seen done better to this day. So I think like you were so amazing as like one of the first few educators of the trainers at Equinox and Equinox Fitness Training Institute. So I don't know, like if you want to tell a story about that.
Well, thank you very much for that compliment, and that is indeed a compliment coming from someone like yourself, who is a very good teacher. So I appreciate that. I think a lot of it tends from two different things. One, as I wasn't being modest when I said gym was the only class I got an A in. I mean, I was struggled most of my life with all forms of academia. So that was part of it. I didn't have many choices career-wise. I happened to be lucky to be that there was a career. If it was 10 years earlier, there was no career in fitness. Right. Second, right. I also had really good teachers on different levels. Mr. Barrett from history and Sister Christopher for Shakespeare, and all these different teachers.
Shit.
Well, and college teachers and all that. Within the first year, 5 of them would eventually go to prison. They might still be there. I mean, sad, they committed crimes. But some of them were smart, but they weren't well educated. You know what I mean? And fitness trainers, a lot of them strike me as that too. And I don't mean to sound racist or a snob, but there are people who their vocabulary is not in league with their brain. And I thought, if we find the right way to explain this to someone, they have the other tools. They're inspiring. They're a good listener. They're good with people. They have a nice smile. Some things you can't teach people. You can't teach people a nice smile, right? Right. They just needed to understand it. That insulin is like a guy with a get-in free pass at Studio 54, and he goes up to any cell and he can get sugar to skip the line and go straight into the cell. You know what I mean? So it was just a matter of little creativity, and then they go, "Oh, I see." And I said, "But there's another way to sneak into the Studio 54. Exercise. While you're exercising, the cell membrane, the doorway that lets things in and out, lets sugar in." And because it says, "Hey, we're exercising. We need this." Of course, it's not called sugar at that stage. It's just called glucose. And glycogen is how it's stored. And you sneak in a little bit of real science in there somewhere. So
and you were the first, and I think the best person, like using stories to explain really complicated stuff. But listen, so what are you doing now?
Career-wise, you mean, or sitting-wise?
Yeah, work-wise.
Okay.
Or
fun-wise, I run a personal training business both in Manhattan and in Brooklyn. The personal training business is like a Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Most of my clients I've had for over 20 years. I haven't really solicited new ones in Manhattan, so I've been very fortunate. Most of them are more like moms and dads to me. At this stage of the game, if I'm 60, they're probably older than me, right? So you can see why.
Right.
So they're mostly a older upscale client. Then I also, in Tuesdays, Thursdays, I teach at a college. I teach in the health and phys ed department. And I sort of teach whatever class is left over from the full-timers. So it might be the health class. It might be a weightlifting class. It might be a walk, what we call a walk, jog, run class.
Awesome.
It also might be stress management. I used to teach, I haven't in a while, but a men's health class, which I really enjoyed. So it's sort of like whatever's left.
Nice.
And it's a good, because the nice thing is it gets me access to lots of different kinds of students who major in different things. Like the health classes, you might guess, you get the nursing majors, stress management, psychology, social work type, and people who just think they're going to get an easy A. And I also happen to volunteer, because I don't get paid, to be the head strength and conditioning coach for all the sports teams. So a conditioning coach deals with the little problems that spring up. It's athletes. I don't know anything about basketball. The basketball coach knows about basketball. But if he has a guy who can't cut to the right as well as he can cut to the left, he may not have enough time to say what's going on with his ankles or groin or where's. So I can then, all right, we need to stretch this, strengthen that. Let's come on down to the gym. Let's spend a couple of got to have him 30 minutes a week or whatever, something like that. So.
Nice.
And that's fun. It's no money, but Ohio State, there might have been 12 of those people,
Right.
in my school. It's a 2-year college. I love teaching there. It's the melting pot of Brooklyn. Brooklyn's the melting pot of the city. And of course the city is the melting pot of the world.
Exactly.
So you get all kinds of languages and stuff. So I like that part of it, which has nothing to do with fitness. It's just that fitness is my medium,
Yeah, exactly. So Michael, I'm going to leave you with 2 questions. And you might have already answered them, and we can do another talk later. But what do you think a new fitness professional needs to know about the profession? And what do you think the average person needs to know about this profession that they might not know?
Yeah, good. First off, and I hate to say this because it sounds pessimistic, but entry-level fitness people need to know that there's not much money that first 3 months to year, that they're probably going to work at a health club. The health club has to pay its insurance and its bills. You're not going to make a lot of money. So if you are a 35-year-old person with 3 kids entering fitness, there are luck. There's good luck and bad luck. But if you're the person, the personal training thing is a much difficult thing to start. Most people work at a health club for a year or so and then move on to do personal training. At my trainers at Chelsea Piers, I would tell them where you want to be 3 to 5 years from now. Right. I said, use Chelsea. We are a fantastic facility. Use us to get to your next thing, because you're not going to be able to get a family and a mortgage and all the things that, you can, but those are few and far between, the trainers who have that, So that's what I would tell them. Anticipate that from your other job before you jump. That, okay, it's going to cost me some money and some time and to build my book, my personal training book. Right. So it's nothing to do with science, it just has to do with business.
Right. And what about the average person? What does the average person need to know about the profession of fitness or personal training?
Oh, man, if anything, do not judge a book by its cover. Do not judge the trainer by their personal physique. Judge it by their communication. How articulate are they? How much do they explain to you? And there are different kinds of explainers. There's the cheerleader, Richard Simmons type of person. There's the scientist type person. There's the drill sergeant type person. And you want a trainer who fits your idea of someone who motivates you. If the body motivates you, that's all right. I can handle that. But please don't walk into a gym and look, okay, who's the most muscularly defined person in the facility? Talk to them. They better have first aid and CPR. They want to have at least one of the nationally recognized personal training certifications. But more importantly, spend time. Most trainers usually give an hour of their time for free. During that time, you're seeing if it works both directions. You have to trust your trainer. They're going to ask you to do things that are very difficult. They're going to ask you to do things when you got injured. And we're not gods. We're not doctors. We have what we call scope of practice. It's difficult for a normal person to figure out what that is. But most adults go, okay, this person seems seasoned and educated and can communicate to me what I need to hear. That's what I would tell you to look for.
All right. Awesome. Michael, I'm going to let you go, and I'm going to bug you again for another interview, okay?
And Ed, how do people, if anyone ever wants to listen to these?
YouTube, the history of personal training, or at least my experience in it. YouTube and Facebook.
History of my experience? Is
No,
that what-
the history of personal training, or at least my experience in it.
Okay. All right. Because first off, I'd like to see. You said Richard Ruiz, right, and some other
Yeah, I
people.
interviewed lots of people.
Oh, he's still in the game. I haven't seen him since Equinox. So
Yeah.
yeah,
All right.
we ought to
Thanks
have
a
an
lot,
alumni.
Michael.
All right, honey bunch. Take care.